All right, it's Thursday, January 16th, 2025, and Don Lemon loses his freaking mind after learning that Donald Trump deserves 100% of the credit for ending the Gaza conflict, and how this solidifies Joe Biden in the history books as Jimmy Carter 2.0. We have the full clip and others. It's great. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps out the channel, and consider subscribing so you don't miss these regular updates. Thank you.
Thank you.
Books credit for this, Mr. President, you or Trump?
Is that a joke? Oh, thank you.
If those hostages aren't back, I don't want to hurt your negotiation. If they're not back by the time I get into office, all hell will break out in the Middle East. And it will not be good for Hamas, and it will not be good, frankly, for anyone. All hell will break out. I don't have to say anymore, but that's what it is.
With only 4 days to go before Trump is sworn in as the 47th president, peace is already breaking out in the Middle East. Trump promising Hamas that all hell will break loose if our hostages, our American hostages, aren't returned before he takes office. Well, what do you know? With 4 days to go before Trump takes office, Hamas is bending the knee and capitulating, clearly scared of Trump's wrath and unpredictability. Trump announced on Truth Social yesterday, "We have a deal for the hostages in the Middle East. They will be released shortly. Thank you." During the 1980 presidential election, one of the main reasons why Ronald Reagan won in such a monumental way, one of the largest victories in American history, possibly the largest victory, was because of Jimmy Carter's weakness on the world stage. Over 50 Americans, 53 Americans, I believe, were taken hostage in Iran and held for over a year. All through the presidential campaign, this was like a main campaign issue. Imagine during the Trump and Kamala campaign if there were 53 Americans just hanging out as hostages. Well, there were, folks. There were hostages in Gaza being held by Hamas. It wasn't a huge issue this campaign, but it was during 1980 or 1979. Jimmy Carter, like Joe Biden, promised during the campaign that his administration was working tirelessly to get our hostages released and end the conflict. And like what's been happening in Gaza with Hamas, Iran laughed in Jimmy Carter's face, completely ignoring him, running roughshod over him, until Ronald Reagan won in a landslide in 1980. And during his transition, he threatened Iran that if they didn't release the American hostages, there would be hell to pay. Almost identical to what Donald Trump just did over the last month.
We want our hostages back, and they better be back before I assume office, or you will be paying a very big price.
If those hostages aren't back, I don't want to hurt your negotiation. If they're not back by the time I get into office, all hell will break out in the Middle East. And it will not be good for Hamas, and it will not be good, frankly, for anyone. All hell will break out. I don't have to say anymore, but that's what it is.
And like magic, Iran agreed to release the 53 American hostages. Jimmy Carter came out and took credit, just as we saw Joe Biden take credit yesterday. Watch Joe Biden getting triggered when a reporter asks him, "Why are you taking credit for this, Joe? Isn't Trump the person who deserves all the credit?" Roll the tape.
Will hold.
I'm confident. Thank you.
Books credit for this, Mr. President, you or Trump?
Is that a joke? Oh, thank you.
Look, Joe Biden will go down as one of the weakest presidents in American history, not like Jimmy Carter, who was empathetically weak. You know, that was just who his personality was. Joe Biden is just incompetently weak. He will go down in the history books as Jimmy Carter 2.0. The comparisons are almost like strikingly obvious. After this, Trump cemented Biden's legacy as Carter 2.0. That's why Trump did this, by the way. So with that in mind, watch as Don Lemon, because yes, Don Lemon is still around. He has his own show now. He went independent after CNN fired him, and like his CNN show, still nobody watches him. But watch regardless as Don Lemon loses his freaking mind as his guest educates him on how all the credit for this ceasefire and the hostage release goes to Donald Trump. This is great. Roll the tape.
This is what I say. According to
diplomats who were involved firsthand in the negotiation, President Biden refused to put any pressure on Netanyahu. And ultimately, they gave up that any deal would happen. It was, and Don, you and I talked about President Trump. I have no love, and I don't want to give
Oh, I know
Trump
that.
any credits, but
Oh,
I
I know that.
but I am in the business of telling the truth.
Same.
Donald Trump intervention have been monumental in making the ceasefire deal possible. And just to make people understand, President Biden not only refused on multiple occasions to put any pressure on the Prime Minister of Israel to do any deal, people who were involved in the negotiation, including Israeli negotiators, told me firsthand that very often they felt that he was more than backing the negotiating team, the Israeli negotiating team. He was backing the Prime Minister agenda and his desire to stay in office. The Israeli media and Israeli ministers, including Ben-Gvir, today confirmed that it was President Trump. Israeli media also confirmed that Netanyahu was already gave up on the hostages. He was willing to sacrifice the hostages for his political desire to stay in power. However, Donald Trump happened to be a transactional president, happened to be a transactional man. He wanted to come to the White House with a win. And that was always his approach.
Well, let me ask you this then. So why did they not wait until he took office, which is just going to be in about a week?
Because he didn't want to deal with these issues as he get into office. He want this issue to be off the table.
Roll up. Okay. I don't agree with that. I think Donald Trump would like to have started off. We know Donald Trump, the day of his inauguration or on the day to announce a ceasefire. The fact that it happened on Biden's watch, I think that leads many people to question whether it was. And look, I'm not saying that you're wrong, but that's going to lead many people to question.
Do you know when the ceasefire will enter in? Do you know when the ceasefire will start?
It's going to start. Well, the temporary ceasefire is going to start. It should start on Sunday, correct?
It will start on the 19th.
You mean the permanent?
No. The phase 1 of the ceasefire will start the day
Trump
inauguration, basically. That's when it will happen.
Trump followed up on Truth Social yesterday, writing, "We have achieved so much without even being in the White House. Just imagine all the wonderful things that will happen when I return to the White House in 4 days, and my administration is fully confirmed so they can secure more victories for the United States. Amen." It's been 15 months since these hostages were taken. The Biden administration had 15 freaking months to get this done. So ask yourself, if Joe Biden or Kamala Harris had won the election in November, do you really think Hamas would be releasing these hostages today? The answer is absolutely not. Even CNN and MSNBC both admitted that. Watch Ari Melber from MSNBC literally squirming in his seat as he has to admit that Trump did this, that Trump just ended this 15-month-long conflict. Watch.
That framework has been available essentially since the end of May. So you might ask the question, as you did, why now? And I would say there was a Trump effect. The Trump effect was on Bibi in the sense that Bibi was not going to say no to Trump, fears the cost of saying no to Trump. There was a Trump effect also, I think, on Qatar and Egypt. They want to please President Trump. And that means they wanted to show how they could do things that would benefit or be responsive to what it is he wants.
Yeah, I'm going to let you continue, but we have some of the reporting on what you're saying, so I want to kind of match it up for viewers. Again, this is a major truce today. And so the Times says what you say, Ambassador, that this was broadly similar to a 3-phase framework publicized by President Biden in May with the 6-week ceasefire. They've reviewed even a copy of the agreement as this was all unfolding today. The same report notes that Donald Trump's threats that all hell would break loose if no deal was reached before his inauguration might have helped motivate Hamas's leadership.
Then the Times of Israel wrote yesterday, Trump envoy swayed Netanyahu more in one meeting than Biden did all year. Even the Washington Post admitted it. A diplomat briefed on the ceasefire negotiations between Israel and Hamas credited progress in the talks in part to the influence of President-elect Donald Trump, saying, "It was the first time there has been real pressure on the Israeli side to accept a deal." That was the Washington Post saying that. So why then is Biden taking credit? The history books. They will get this right, folks, the same way they did with Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Carter. 4 more days. That's it. 4 more days. All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.